If you are 40 years old and broke, or 50 and struggling, or 60 and quietly panicking every time you check your bank account, every single word that follows is for you. Not the version of you that feels embarrassed about where you are, the version of you that is still willing to do something about it. Because that person, the one still willing to fight, still has a chance. This pattern has played out for 95 years. People hit their 40s and the realization lands like a stone. They are behind. Not a little behind, way behind. No meaningful savings, no investments, no plan. Just a paycheck coming in and bills going out, and somewhere in the middle, the terrifying awareness that time is moving faster than money is accumulating. And the conclusion most people reach in that moment is that the game is already over, that wealth is something that happens to other people, people who started earlier, inherited more, or got lucky in ways that were never available to them. That conclusion is wrong. It has always been wrong. And the sooner it is discarded, the sooner actual progress can begin. Wealth was built to over $100 billion. And here is what almost nobody talks about. The most consequential wealth-building years were not the 20s. They were not even the 30s. They were the 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. Because compounding does not care about a birth certificate. It cares about consistency, discipline, and time. 25 years of disciplined investing is not a consolation prize. It is an opportunity, a serious one. People who started at 20 and made foolish decisions ended up with nothing. People who started at 50 and made smart, patient decisions ended up with millions. Age is not the variable that matters. Behavior is. So if you are 40 and broke, or anywhere near it, do not turn away from this. What follows is not theory. It is what works, what has always worked, and what will work for you if you are willing to commit to it completely. The first thing to understand is that time is simultaneously your enemy and your friend, and you need to be honest about both sides of that equation. As a 40-year-old, you do not have the 40-year runway that a 22-year-old has. You have roughly 25 years, maybe 30 if you work a little longer than planned. That is the honest disadvantage. Less time means less total compounding. There is no way around that arithmetic. But here is what that same 40-year-old has that the 22-year-old almost certainly does not. Peak earning power, experience, established skills, a career with real trajectory, the ability to invest significantly larger amounts each month than any entry-level earner ever could. You may have less time, but you have considerably more ammunition. The question is whether you use it. The math is not complicated, but it is important. If you are 40 today and begin investing $500 a month at 10% annual returns, you will have approximately $650,000 by age 65. That may not sound extraordinary, but it is a retirement. It is security. It is the difference between dignity and dependence. Now push that to $1,000 a month under the same conditions, and the result is $1.3 million. At $1,500 a month, starting from absolute zero at age 40, the number approaches $2 million by retirement. That is not a marketing claim. That is the documented historical record of American capitalism functioning over time. Index funds have been recommended for years as the optimal choice for most investors. They outperform the majority of actively managed funds after fees are accounted for. They require no expertise to hold. They demand nothing from the investor except the discipline not to panic and sell when the market falls. That last part is harder than it sounds, but it is the entire game. Boring, consistent, automatic investing into index funds is what builds real wealth starting at 40. Not excitement, not clever positioning. Consistency. Before investing aggressively, however, there is one more foundational step that cannot be skipped: an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of living expenses held in cash in a high-yield savings account, accessible immediately when needed. This is not money that builds wealth. It is money that prevents the destruction of wealth. Without it, the first serious emergency, a medical bill, a car breakdown, a temporary job loss, forces a choice between selling investments at whatever price the market offers that day or returning to credit card debt. Either outcome unravels months or years of disciplined progress in a single week. The ability to hold investments through market downturns is where generational wealth is actually created. The people who stayed invested through 2008, through 2020, through every correction in between, are the people who compounded their way to financial freedom. The people who panic sold locked in their losses and missed the recovery. Building the emergency fund first is what makes holding possible. It removes the financial desperation that forces bad timing. Once the debt is gone and the emergency fund is established, the tax-advantaged accounts become the priority. Someone playing catch-up cannot afford unnecessary tax drag on investment growth. Every available account should be maxed out before a single dollar goes into a taxable brokerage. If an employer offers a 401k with matching contributions, at minimum, contribute enough to capture the full match. An employer matching 50 cents per dollar up to 6% of salary is offering a guaranteed 50% return on that portion of contributions. Passing on that match is one of the most expensive financial decisions a person can make, and most people don't even realize they're making it. In 2025, 401k annual contributions can reach $23,000. For those 50 and older, an additional $7,500 in catch-up contributions brings the annual total to $30,500, growing entirely free of current tax liability. IRA contributions add another $7,000 per year, or $8,000 for those 50 and older. Every dollar flowing through these accounts compounds either tax-free or tax-deferred. Over 15 to 20 years, the mathematical advantage of that tax shelter is enormous, far larger than most people appreciate until they run the actual numbers. Housing is where many 40-year-olds quietly bleed their financial future without realizing it. The cultural expectation is clear. By 40, a person should have a substantial home in a respectable neighborhood, reflecting the success they have worked towards. And that expectation is financially ruinous for anyone who cannot genuinely afford it. A mortgage that consumes 35 or 40% of gross income, combined with property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, leaves nothing for investment. The house looks like an asset, it functions like a drain. A house was purchased in 1958 for $31,500. That same house remains home today. A different home could have been purchased at virtually any point in the decade since. Any property, anywhere in the world, would have been financially accessible. But why? The house is comfortable, it's paid off, it requires minimal ongoing cost, and because housing was kept deliberately inexpensive for decades, enormous capital was freed up to invest elsewhere. The investments built the wealth, the house simply provided shelter. If housing costs exceed 25% of gross income, the situation demands correction. Downsize, relocate to a lower-cost area, do whatever is structurally necessary to bring that number down and redirect the freed capital into investments. A house is a place to live. It should not be the reason retirement is impossible. The same principle applies to vehicles. New cars lose approximately 20% of their value the moment they're driven off the lot. Over 5 years, depreciation reaches roughly 60%. A $40,000 car becomes a $16,000 asset, and if it was financed, interest was paid on top of that loss the entire time. A 5-year-old used car that has already absorbed that depreciation costs $16,000, performs the same primary function of getting its owner from one place to another, and represents $24,000 in immediate savings compared to buying new. That $24,000 invested at 10% over 20 years becomes approximately $165,000 from one single decision about which vehicle to drive. New cars have never been purchased personally. Used vehicles get driven until they are no longer reliable. People assume this reflects cheapness. It reflects math. For anyone at 40 carrying a monthly car payment, selling that vehicle, replacing it with something reliable purchased outright in cash, and redirecting that monthly payment into an index fund is a decision that could by itself meaningfully fund a retirement. On the subject of Social Security, the expectation must be recalibrated completely. The average monthly benefit is approximately $1,800, which amounts to $21,600 annually. That is not a retirement, that is poverty with a federal label on it. No meaningful travel, no financial cushion for medical expenses, no margin for anything unexpected, just the bare minimum of subsistence until death. Social Security was designed as a supplement to retirement income, not a replacement for it. Anyone building a retirement plan around Social Security as the primary source of income is building a plan to be poor. The target is for Social Security to represent 15 to 20% of total retirement income, at most. The rest must come from personal investment accounts, 401k balances, IRAs, and whatever taxable investment positions have been built over the working years. This requires taking personal responsibility for the outcome, rather than depending on a government program that was never designed to carry the full weight.
On the question of retirement timing, the honest answer for someone 40 and behind is that the originally imagined retirement age may need adjustment. Retiring at 62 is a pleasant vision. For someone with minimal savings at 40, it may just not be financially viable. Working until 70 instead of 65 provides 5 additional years of contributions going in, 5 additional years of compounding on the existing balance,
and 5 fewer years of withdrawals coming out. The combined effect on total retirement wealth is substantial. Beyond that, delaying Social Security from age 62 to age 70 increases the monthly benefit by approximately 76%. That difference, received every month for the remainder of a retirement, represents the gap between chronic financial stress and genuine comfort. Working longer is not a punishment, it is a strategy. Staying mentally engaged, purposeful, and connected to meaningful work is independently valuable, especially when the alternative is retiring early into financial anxiety. There is one more point that deserves direct attention. For someone 40 and financially behind, the goal is not to leave an impressive inheritance. The goal is to not become a financial burden to the people who will be asked to care for you when you can no longer care for yourself. That is the real inheritance a parent can give their children. Arriving at old age financially independent, not needing them to supplement income, not moving in because there's nowhere else to go, not calling with financial emergencies that land on their shoulders. If enough wealth is accumulated to pass something meaningful along, that is a welcome bonus, but it cannot be the primary objective when the foundation has not yet been built. 99% of accumulated wealth is going to charitable causes. Children receive enough to do something meaningful with their lives, but not enough to eliminate the motivation to build something of their own. Children do not need inherited wealth. They need parents who took care of themselves. Now, all of this leads to the most important point of the entire conversation: the timing. Not next month, not after one more bill is paid off or one more purchase is justified. Right now. Every single day of delay carries a permanent cost that cannot be recovered. A dollar invested at 10% over 30 years becomes $17. That same dollar invested exactly 1 year later becomes $15.50. 1 year of waiting costs $1.50 per dollar invested. Across thousands of dollars over multiple years of delay, the total cost runs to tens of thousands of dollars in permanently lost wealth. That money does not come back. There is no catching up for time that was wasted. The compounding that did not happen simply does not exist. Serious, committed investing began in the 30s and 40s, and that is when the trajectory genuinely changed. Not because the investments were more sophisticated or the strategy more clever, because the amounts invested were larger and the time horizon was still long enough to matter enormously. That exact opportunity is available right now to anyone willing to begin today. 25 years from 40 to 65 is not a short window. Applied with discipline, it produces real, meaningful, life-changing wealth. Not billionaire wealth in most cases, but the wealth that produces freedom. The wealth that means the bills are paid, the retirement is funded, and the future belongs to you rather than to whoever you might otherwise have to ask for help. The steps are not complicated. Calculate net worth today. Assets minus all debts. Look at the actual number without flinching, especially if it is negative. Clarity is the starting point for every good decision that follows. Build a detailed budget that accounts for every dollar. Find everything that neither builds wealth nor produces genuine value and cut it without hesitation. Eliminate all high-interest debt as aggressively as income allows. Build the emergency fund to at least 3 months of expenses before beginning aggressive investment. Then, open the tax-advantaged accounts. Fund a low-cost S&P 500 index fund, set contributions to automatic monthly deposits, and leave them alone to compound. From that point forward, every dollar freed by growing income, shrinking debt, or reduced expenses goes directly into investments. Not into a newer car, not into a larger house, not into a vacation that cannot actually be afforded. Into investments every time, without exception. This is how broke at 40 becomes financially secure at 65. Not through brilliance, not through luck, not through finding some secret the wealthy are hiding, through behavior sustained over 25 years. Mistakes have accumulated throughout an investing career. Poor decisions, bad timing on certain positions, investments that looked sound and turned out not to be. None of that was fatal because the behavior that followed each mistake was correction rather than repetition.
Mistakes only become permanently damaging when the response to them is to continue making the same ones. The line gets drawn today. Being broke at 40 is a circumstance. Staying broke is a choice. Starting late does not determine the finish. What determines the finish is whether the right behaviors begin now and are maintained long enough for compounding to do its work. It will require living differently than the people around you. Older cars while friends drive new ones, smaller homes while colleagues upgrade, fewer indulgences, more discipline, more patience, more willingness to say no to immediate comfort in exchange for long-term freedom. In 25 years, most of those same people will still be working, still stressed, still one emergency away from crisis, and the person who chose discipline will have options. Real ones. The freedom to retire or keep working by genuine choice. The freedom to help rather than ask for help. The freedom that comes only from having built something that belongs entirely to you. That freedom is worth every dollar of sacrifice required to reach it. Stop making excuses about the past. Stop treating where you are as evidence of where you must remain. The only question that matters now is what you do starting today. Because 25 years from now, the version of you sitting in retirement will have been built entirely by the decisions made in this moment. Start now. Completely. Your future self is depending on it.